Hi, this is Michael Matherly in the VMSA Studio. Today I'm joined by Justin Lumby, a partner at TalentNet. Justin, welcome.
Thank you, Michael. Pleased to meet you.
There's quite a bit of technology activity going on in the temp labor, gig-based economy, our industry. How do you explain what's driving that?
Sure. In my opinion, and from what we're seeing with our clients, and also sort of in my previous role as a buyer, I think it's really a reflection of the maturity that some of these programs are starting to reach. You look at sort of the penetration of VMS in the market, going back to the early 2000s, the maturity of MSPs. And I think now what we're seeing is, as those programs become more mature, they take care of sort of a lot of the foundational initiatives that they set out to do. They're now looking for new value-added streams, new sort of strategies that they can employ to take those programs to the next level. And I think that's reflected in some of these technologies that are now emerging that are attempting to solve for some of these opportunities and challenges.
Yeah, TalentNet is a software provider, so how does TalentNet add to the emergence in this space?
Sure. So TalentNet develops and deploys what we call direct source solutions into large enterprise, typically VMS-based contingent workforce programs. What that does is it allows organizations to form these curated talent pools. So effectively, they can define certain sources, be it legacy workers that they've had in the past, a .com integration perhaps to their corporate brand, or even looking at integrations to something like their ATS and attempting to enable new streams of labor that they can then consume.
Yeah. The technology is squarely aligned with more of a direct or self-sourcing initiative. Do you see any technologies, maybe yours, that's impacting or will impact in the future some of the service providers like the MSPs?
Sure. Tricky question. I think even in working quite closely with a lot of MSPs, I think in general, in taking TalentNet, these direct source providers or even other sort of technology providers off the table for a moment, again, I think back to looking at where these programs are in terms of maturity, the maturity of MSP models, and I think for a lot of MSPs as well, they're looking at now, we've taken care of a lot of sort of those foundational sort of initiatives that we set out to do, and I think we're seeing now an evolution in MSP operational models. There's certainly a lot of talk that I'm hearing now of certain programs going in-house, some going to some sort of hybrid sort of solution. I don't particularly have an opinion on it that one is better. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all. But I think certainly we're going to see a shift in time where MSPs begin to partner with some of these technology providers like a TalentNet, other sort of direct source technology providers, and look to bring sort of an additional level of value into their clients.
Generally, we think of our industry and how the service providers, technology and MSPs, as supporting the companies. But as we move to this more gig-based, freelancer type of economy, how do you meet the needs of those freelancers out there? How do you meet the needs of the talent and make it easier for them to do and work the way they want to work?
Sure. I think it's a great question, and it's we're seeing now. You see unemployment rates that are very low. There's certainly a war, if you will, out there for talent. And I think if you go back, sort of 5, 10, and even 20 years, and look at engagement workflows for workers to come into organizations. At times they are a little ambiguous. It's not maybe the best candidate experience that they could have. But in addition to that, I think workers now are looking to be more flexible in how they conduct work, be it where they're located when they're performing that work, or even you look at sort of the Uberization, if you will, right. Sort of the economy where folks want more than one position, more than one job, and flexibility to do that. So I think in addition to providing sort of a enhanced candidate experience, some of these technology platforms are allowing for more flexibility in how workers engage with organizations.
Yeah, it's very interesting how our industry is changing. But speaking of change, what do you see? This is the typical question, but it seems to get more and more difficult to answer. But what do you see in 5 years, where we are from a technology perspective in this industry?
Sure. I think we're approaching sort of an intersection, and I think that's leading to some of this technology innovation. I think it is reflective in sort of the underlying MSP models starting to shift and adapt. And you're starting to, as these programs become more mature, they become viewed as more strategic within their organization. And as they, I think, elevate their prominence, we see more collaboration now with, for instance, human resources. So looking at a total sort of talent strategy as opposed to these verticals where we have sort of our full-time equivalent workforce, our contingent workforce, and SOW workforce. And I think now we're starting to see, both from a technology perspective, but also from an operational perspective, strategies that are starting to emerge that attempt to sort of leverage and allow cross-pollination between those various areas.
Yeah, that's interesting. We generally think about emerging technologies kind of coming on the scene because there's a demand for it. Do you think that's what's happening today and in the very near future? Is it the demand side that's demanding this, or is it maybe the supplier side?
Yeah, it's a great question. I can speak to that from a personal perspective. So as a former buyer and part of the catalyst of me joining and helping to form TalentNet, was for that very reason. So I saw an opportunity as a buyer that there was probably a more strategic way that we could both enable our contingent workforce, but also engage with potential contingent workers out there, and then looking at how that strategy, again, can start to be collaborative with things like human resources. Right. So I think absolutely there's a demand on the buyer side, but again, I go back to the supplier base and also MSPs. I think there's a lot now that are realizing, it's not about in-housing or out-housing or going away. It's really about shifting, and I think we're seeing some very interesting strategies starting to emerge because of that.
Yeah, it's an exciting time in our industry. Well, we like to end these interviews kind of on a fun, lighthearted note.
Sure.
So here's the question that you may or may not be prepared for. If you had a ticket written to any place in the world for you to travel with whoever you like to travel with, where would you go and why?
Where would I go and why? I would probably go with my son to Thailand. I spent some time there a few years ago. Really admire sort of the people, the Buddhist culture. Beautiful place, so I'd love to introduce him to that.
How old is your son?
He's 2.5.
Oh, it'd be wonderful. Something to look forward to.
Absolutely.
Well, Justin, thank you so much for joining us in the VMSA studio. I'm Michael Matherly. Thank you.